Today, we're diving into one of the biggest intelligence operations in modern history, the decade-long, painstaking hunt for Osama bin Laden. It's an incredible story of dead ends, brilliant analysis, and the one single thread that finally unraveled the whole thing.
So this was the central problem, right? The question that kept intelligence agencies up at night for years. After 9/11, Osama bin Laden was the most wanted man on the planet. But he was a ghost. No phones, no internet, absolutely no electronic trail. How do you even start to find somebody like that?
So, let's jump to 2004. By this point, for almost 3 years, the search for bin Laden had gone completely cold. The CIA had basically nothing, and a lot of people were wondering if he was even still alive. And then, a tape showed up.
Just a few days before the US presidential election, Al Jazeera drops this video. And in it, you see a healthy, confident bin Laden, for the first time, directly claiming responsibility for 9/11. I mean, this was a straight-up taunt. He wasn't just alive, he felt safe enough to broadcast a message to his enemies. It proved the hunt was nowhere near over.
You have to remember just how frustrating these early years were. U.S. forces literally had him cornered in the mountains of Tora Bora in late 2001, but he just slipped away. After that, nothing. The trail went ice cold for years. So this 2004 tape wasn't just proof of life, it completely reignited the urgency of the search.
So, with no digital breadcrumbs to follow, the CIA had to go old school. They turned to human intelligence, starting the slow, grinding process of building a picture of al-Qaeda's inner circle by interrogating captured operatives. And these three men, they became absolutely central to the whole investigation. Each one held a different piece of this giant puzzle, from the logistics guys to the absolute mastermind. But getting useful, verifiable info out of them, well, that was going to be a whole other challenge.
You know, the first real crack in the case came from Mohammed al-Qahtani. At first, he denied everything, said he had nothing to do with al-Qaeda, but his fingerprints told a totally different story. They matched him to a guy who'd tried to get into the U.S. right before 9/11. So investigators dug up old airport surveillance footage, and boom, there he is getting picked up in a car rented by Mohammed Atta, the 9/11 ringleader. It was proof that even tiny forensic details could be the key.
So through these interrogations, it became really clear that bin Laden was communicating, but not in any way they could track. He was using this low-tech system of human messengers, couriers, and this was his greatest protection. Right? It left zero digital footprint. It all relied on human trust. The entire intelligence strategy had to pivot. They had to stop hunting for a signal and start hunting for the people carrying the messages. They had to find his courier network.
Okay, so this is where everything changes. After years of just collecting these little bits and pieces of information, one name, or really one alias, starts popping up over and over again, and it pointed to someone who was incredibly important. It was 2004 when a captured operative named Hassan Ghul told interrogators that bin Laden's most trusted, his personal courier, was a man they all called Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti, which just means the Kuwaiti. And that was a massive lead. If you can find the personal courier, you found a direct line to bin Laden himself.
But of course, it got complicated. When they asked the high-level guys like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed about al-Kuwaiti, they all started singing the same tune. They all claimed he was retired, insignificant, not important. For the CIA analysts, this was like a giant flashing red light. The stories were just too similar, too rehearsed. If this guy were really a nobody, why would they need a coordinated cover story? The very act of trying to hide him proved he was the key.
Now we have to talk about how they got this information. It's really important. A 2014 U.S. Senate report looked into these interrogations and came to a major conclusion, that enhanced interrogation techniques were not in fact effective and did not produce the key intelligence that ultimately led them to bin Laden. Now this directly contradicted some earlier claims that these methods were essential. It's still a point of intense debate, but it is a critical finding in the official record of this whole story.
So the CIA has an alias, al-Kuwaiti, but it's like they're chasing a phantom. For years, they couldn't find his real name, couldn't find his location, and the trail went cold, again. The breakthrough, when it finally happened, didn't even come from a CIA op. It came from an outside source.
Think about that. For 2 whole years after they first got that name, it was just a lead that went nowhere. Then, finally, in 2007, a foreign intelligence service handed them the missing piece. The courier's real name was Ibrahim Saeed Ahmed. Finally, they had a name. The hunt was officially back on. And once they had a real name, the NSA could finally get to work. They started intercepting phone numbers of Ahmed's family, and sifting through all these calls, they found one guy who fit the profile perfectly. He was super careful, only turning his phone on in this wide area around Peshawar, so it was really hard to pin down. Then, in August 2010, years after they first got his name, an agent on the ground physically spotted his car.
One of the monitored phone calls in particular just sealed the deal for the analysts. A friend asks Ahmed where he's been, and he gives this really cryptic reply: "I'm with the people I was with before." That was it. Classic spycraft. A deliberately vague answer that told the CIA they were absolutely listening to the right guy.
So now the agents had their man. The plan was simple, right? Follow the courier. They figured it would take weeks, maybe even months, of careful surveillance before he eventually led them to bin Laden's secret hideout. Oh, they were so wrong.
The whole working theory, the foundation of the entire surveillance operation, was that this courier, Ahmed, lived somewhere else and would travel every so often to meet with bin Laden. But what they found when they actually followed him home, it just blew all their expectations out of the water.
He didn't lead them to some remote cave or hidden safe house. He led them to this huge 3-story compound in a suburb of Abbottabad, Pakistan. We're talking 18-foot walls topped with barbed wire. No phone lines, no internet connection. And its location, right next to a Pakistani military academy, was weird enough, but the building itself was the real clue. It was just way too big and way too secure for some simple courier.
And that's when the final piece of this decade-long puzzle just clicked into place. The agents realized their entire assumption had been wrong. Ahmed wasn't visiting bin Laden. He was living with him. That fortress wasn't the courier's house. It was the hideout they had been desperately searching for 10 years. The hunt was over. So after 10 years, thousands of people, and countless dead ends, this whole massive operation really boiled down to finding and tracking one single person. It makes you wonder, right? Was this a triumph of big data and massive surveillance? Or was it a victory for good old-fashioned detective work, just patiently following that one human lead until the whole case finally broke wide open? Something to think about. Thanks for